Well, hello, and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg, and I am here today to do a Friday Reads video. I have a lot of books to talk about in this video, and today has been a day. We're going to get to the books in a second. I'm going to wrap up 2022, finally, because I'm going to talk about the last two books that I finished in 2022, and then we'll talk about the 1, 2, 3 books that I have finished in 2023 so far. So altogether, we're going to do 5 books, and it has been a day. It is Friday as I'm filming this because my MO with a Friday Reads video is to film Friday Reads on Friday and then post it on Saturday. So we're heading into a long weekend in the United States. Martin Luther King Day is on Monday. That's the light at the end of the tunnel for me, because today has just been like manic with work. And it is what it is. I have a job. I can't really complain. But as a result, I am filming this later in the day than I usually would. And I haven't really had a lot of time to think about what I might want to say in this video. I remember that I did want to cover a channel recommendation for you. I recently discovered a channel called Roro Reads. I'm going to link it down below. It's been a long time since I recommended a new channel. To be perfectly honest, it's been a while since I discovered a new channel. With everything that went on in the last part of 2022, I really slowed down looking for or seeking out new channels. I very much stayed in the sort of comfortable realm of the familiar and didn't branch out very much. I kind of just turned to the channels that I liked the most and stuck with them over that time. But this is a new channel that you will find linked in the description box down below. And it's interesting because we do read some of the same books, but not a whole lot, and yet I still enjoy watching his videos about the books, even books that I might not consider wanting to read. So it's been a good channel to watch. Typically, I only recommend channels that are under 1,000 subscribers to try to help people discover them. He's a little close, but I definitely recommend this channel, so please check it out down below. The only other thing before we get into the books is I was speaking with Erica from The Broken Spine. I'll link her channel down below as well. And we were talking about Kindred, the series. I mentioned last week, I talked about it in more muted tones, but the more I've thought about it, and then after talking with Erica, I really don't like what they did to that show. I really don't. And maybe this isn't the time because I haven't had a chance to really prepare thoughts or anything, but I do very much dislike the changes that they made and what they did to Octavia Butler's Kindred. So I'm going to leave it at that, actually, because I don't really want to get into it without having thought out. I think that is something that requires a more thought out discussion. And today is not the day for it, so I'm going to leave it alone. So let's just get into the actual Friday Reads portion of this video and talk about the books that I have been reading. So we're going to start with the 2 books that I finished 2022 with. So I think I may have briefly mentioned them in my December reading wrap-up. I don't even remember. Everything has been a blur. And then last week I didn't do a Friday Reads because Joel and I, we wrapped up December and then we moved into our best of the year. I'll have links down below for our best fiction books of 2022, our best nonfiction books of 2022. Actually, last week I talked about my worst books. That's what I didn't want to lump other books into my worst books video. So that will be down below. And my almost best books of 2022 will be down below. So the first one I want to talk about is The Sheep Queen by Thomas Savage. The reason I was really interested in this one is that Thomas Savage wrote The Power of the Dog. If you remember, The Power of the Dog was my favorite read of 2021. I'll link that video down below too. Why not? You have a lot of options for things if you want to seek out more content down in the description box. I love this book. It is fantastic. It's really well written. Ever since I read it, I was curious to read another book by Thomas Savage. And actually, someone who says they are the granddaughter of Thomas Savage recently commented on my video where I compare The Power of the Dog, the film, to the book. And she said she really enjoyed the video. That boggled my mind. I can't even talk about it. I was so excited because I put a lot of work into that video. I'll link that down below too. Again, you're going to have a lot of options for things that you could watch if you want to go down there. So this is the reason I was seeking out more of Thomas Savage's work. This year for the Montana Book Company Reading Challenge, there was a prompt to read a book by a Montana author. Thomas Savage was born elsewhere, but he was born in Salt Lake City. It says it on the back. He moved to Montana when he was a young child, grew up here, and went to college at the University of Montana, which is the university here in Missoula where I live. He then went other places and ultimately died in Virginia. That says that on the back. He doesn't say he died there. It said currently lives in Virginia, but he has since died. So because of that period where he was in Montana, it counts. And I took the opportunity, since I wanted to read another one of his books, and this is really the other one that people talk about a lot. It was originally published under I Heard My Sister Speak My Name, I believe. Let me see if I can figure that out. It's not going to say here. I Heard My Sister Speak My Name. It's on the copyright page. The name was changed at some point. This is an interesting book because it is semi-autobiographical. And I think it's not as strong as The Power of the Dog. This is a really high bar to clear, but it's a very good book. I would say, I think I gave it 4 stars on Storygraph. It might be more like a 3.5, but it's very good. I think it's tricky a lot of the time when something is so highly personal to an author. It feels like he's trying to exercise his own demons. So this is more a project for him than it is for anyone else. And that's why I think it ultimately is a little bit weaker. It is an interesting story. It opens with a woman named Amy, who is adopted by a family in Seattle as an infant. And that is my favorite part of the book, actually. That first section that is about her and her childhood and this very practical, even kind of boring couple that adopted her, and how she grows up and where her life goes and spins out, and what ultimately makes her seek out her family. When this book was published, which is in the 1970s, or maybe even at the time this character would have grown up, it was not legal to find out who your birth parents were if you were adopted. And I'm sure there were a lot of reasons for that. I won't go into them here. But her father, who was a lawyer, had found the names of her birth parents and put them in a safe deposit box. So when both he and his wife had died, she was able to access them. There was an envelope that said, if you want to know, you can open them. So it's about, the first section is about her life, and then she finds out that she could find out if she wants to, and then ultimately she does decide to find out and tries to contact the family. The rest of the book is from the perspective of the family, and in particular the brother, who is sort of a stand-in for Thomas Savage. And I really missed the sections that were about Amy once we started moving away from them. I'm trying to move stuff around because here comes Jamie. I really missed the sections that were about Amy and her personality. I do kind of wish that the book had either pivoted back to her point of view every once in a while, or that it had kind of stayed with her a little longer. Because once the book moves away from her and into the perspective of the Thomas Savage stand-in, I didn't like it as much. It is still interesting, but it loses some of that dynamic force. And it's a really interesting book. I liked it. I'm glad I read it. I would still be curious to read other books by Thomas Savage. I think he had a book that was called The Corner of Rife and Pacific, which was nominated for the PEN/Faulkner Award and won the Pacific Northwest Booksellers Association Award. This little author blurb on the back is doing a lot of work for me in this Friday Reads video. So I think that might be the one that I would seek out next. I don't have any plans to do it this year. At some point, we'll see how that goes. But I'm glad I read it. I read another Thomas Savage book, and I have now 2 Thomas Savage books on my bookshelves. My library, by the way, is almost done. Over the weekend, I'm hoping we will put together my new desk in there, and then it will be done and ready for a new library tour. So stay tuned for that. We are slowly but surely putting it together. The other book that I crammed into 2022 is The 30 Names of Night by Zeyn, Joukhadar. So this is actually the last book that I crammed into 2022. I do think this book suffered because of that. It was another thing I needed to finish to complete the Montana Book Company Reading Challenge for 2022. I used it for the prompt, pick a book based on the cover. How pretty is that cover? And I actually had to read the back of the book to sort of remind myself what it is even about. I think that is just to show you how much I think this book suffered by me trying to cram it in at the end of the year. Probably it would have been better off for the book if I had either slowed down so I didn't have to try to rush through it to get it done. The other thing is I just didn't feel in the mood for this type of book. And I'm not very good at forcing that kind of thing. Like if I'm not into it, I'm not into it. And it's really hard to force myself to try to get into it. So because I'm a bit of a mood reader, I wasn't in the mood, but I needed to do it for the challenge. So I did. So maybe someday I will try again. I don't think this book really got a fair shake for me. I thought it was good, but I didn't love it. And I admit there were even stretches where I was listening to the audio actually in order to cram it in. I admit I probably wasn't paying the best attention to it. So this is a story about a trans-Syrian American teenager who is sort of in the process of coming out. His mother had died. It's a weird story, and I think that's the other thing. So there's a chance that it's not actually me, and the fact that I rushed it in, it may just be the story. So his mother thought she saw a rare bird. Nobody believes her, but there's an artist who also may have seen it. She may have done a painting of this bird, and he feels like if he can find the painting, this artist has disappeared. It will prove that his mother did see it. I feel like I didn't give this book a very fair shake, so maybe I should just leave it alone and not talk about it too much. But I did think it was an odd premise, and I wasn't very into it. Might have been me, might have been the book. If you have read this, let me know what you thought of it in the comment section down below, because maybe someday I'll try again, but I feel like right now I'm just going to leave it alone. I definitely think it was not the time for me to be reading it, and not as quickly as I tried to get through it. It definitely suffered for that. So that is The 30 Names of Night by Zeyn Joukhadar. That completed 2022. Let's talk about what I have finished in 2023 so far. Now, I am not someone who believes that you should carefully select the first book that you read in a new year. I know there are a lot of people who feel like the first book sort of sets the tone for the whole year. I don't subscribe to that. If you do, totally fine, go ahead and do you. But I don't typically care. And I'm also not someone who feels bad if I have a book that carries over into the new year. There have been a couple of times, even last year, I think I had Go Tell It on the Mountain by James Baldwin. I started it at the end of December and finished it on like January 1st or January 2nd. To me, that's fine. I don't care. And if I hadn't been finishing this for the Montana Book Company Reading Challenge, I probably would have done the same. But the Montana Book Company Reading Challenge was due on December 30th, and I felt like I needed to have it done. So with all that being said, Enter a Murderer by Ngaio Marsh was the first book that I read and finished in 2023. And if you follow along, you know I read the first book in the series that follows a detective named Roderick Allen in December. My neighbor had recommended this, and it was wild. I liked parts of it. I tend to like classic whodunits, and that's why my neighbor had recommended this. So there was enough good about it that I'm curious enough to continue in the series, but it was a little wild. And this was better. It doesn't take the leaps that the first book in the series does. It was fine. I don't really have a whole lot to say about it. In this one, oddly, it has a character from the first book that I really didn't think was going to repeat. Now I wonder if he's in all of the books. He's a journalist who is sort of inexplicably allowed full access to the police investigation, kind of as he was in the first book, which was also inexplicable. So I wonder if he's going to continue in this series or if he's going to drop off. I kind of hope he drops off. He's not as interesting as the detective. Anyway, that journalist invites Roderick Allen to see a production of a play. During the play, one of the actors is supposed to be shot with a blank, but there's a real bullet in the gun. So he actually does get shot and killed on stage. And of course, Roderick Allen investigates. It's fine. That's all. And now, in the spirit of the day, This cut right here is because I got a phone call from work, just in the spirit of the day. This day won't end. I don't remember where I left off with Enter a Murderer, but I think I was basically done. So I will leave it at that. I will continue with the series. I have a copy of the third book in the series. I would probably read it maybe January, maybe February. I have some other things I want to get to soon. So I'm going to try to get to those. And then maybe January, February, I'm dropping stuff. I will fit in number 3 because I will continue with the series. I don't know how far I'll go with the series. I'm not loving it. It was a nice diversion so far. And if it continues to be that, I'll keep reading them. So that's all you need at the end of the day. That is Enter a Murderer by Ngaio Marsh. Here's where we get to my first 5-star read of 2023. The Inland Island by Josephine Johnson. I have a copy from the library. It does not have a dust jacket on it. However, they used to make books really pretty. This cloth-bound hardcover has such beautiful little detail on the cover. The spine is stunning. And then you can tell it had a dust jacket because they have pasted in the description of the book from that. Now, if you follow along, you know I have recently been a little obsessed with Josephine Johnson. I read Now in November last year as part of my Pulitzer Prize project. My Pulitzer Prize project is I am trying to read every book that has won a Pulitzer Prize for fiction. Now in November was the 1935 winner, I believe, and it is a very forgotten book, although I'm hoping that it is going to be rediscovered. And I have my full video about Now in November, which I will link down below. Again, there's a lot of stuff to check out if you want to take a look down there. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about Now in November, but because I've been sort of obsessed with Josephine Johnson, I also read her memoir, 7 Houses, and now I read The Inland Island, my first 5-star read of 2023. And this is a truly beautiful edition of this book. It's illustrated. This is nature nonfiction, and actually I was able to use it for a prompt on the Montana Book Company 2023 reading challenge, which is read a book about nature, I think, something like that. And this is what I did for it. So every chapter is about a month of the year. So there obviously then there are 12 chapters, and each chapter opens with a really stunning illustration. And basically, in her later life, when she had kind of left writing behind, she did circle back to it later in her career, but Josephine Johnson and her husband purchased property in Ohio. And as she explains in January, they talked to a sort of nature person, somebody who was really like a biologist, something like that. I am not in my best mind right now. It's been a day. And asked them how they could take their land, because they had a lot of it, and make it sort of like a nature preserve. And the person told them, well, you don't do anything, actually. You just let nature do its thing over time, and that's exactly what they did. So over the next 20 years, their children grew up, moved out, and they continued to live there. And so at the point of this, she turns 57, I believe, during the course of the book. And every chapter is a month on that property, and she observes the way snow comes in, the way the rain falls, and what impact that has on the animals, what animals leave, what animals come in, what flowers you might see, what trees are blooming. And what's really interesting about this is I have never really read a book that made me want to go out for a walk in nature. I like going for a walk, but I don't know. It's never really been my thing. This book made me want to go out for a walk and start observing and paying closer attention to all of the natural life around me, because it is really staggeringly beautiful and well written. Honestly, as much as I love Now in November, I think The Inland Island is Josephine Johnson's masterpiece. I love it. Let me read you a little bit from the beginning just to give you a sense. January. The new year lies before us. One stands on a high, firm place. All is clean and clear. The air is fresh, not freezing. Hoarfrost is on the valley trees, gray ice on the pond, and glitter on the grass clumps. The delicate dead grasses are frosted, the plowed earth cold and bitter chocolate brown. This beautiful slice of land is all that's left. It's my lifeblood. The old house is abandoned down in the valley where the mammoth bones were found in the quarry. We are on this side of the ridge from that valley now. The children are gone, the horse is gone, the old house gone. What's left? A world of trees, wild birds, wild weeds, a world of singular, briery beauty that will last my life. It's such a good book. I am a huge fan. So I actually, spoiler for my book haul for January, I went online and found a copy of this book, an older copy. I'm hoping it will look like this, but we'll see what happens when it actually comes. You'll find out in my January book haul that I've had some good luck and some bad luck buying books, used books online lately. So I'm hoping it's going to look like this. That's the goal. And when it comes, I kind of want to reread it. That's how much I liked this book, because I didn't take notes the first time around, and I really want to go back and take notes. Here's February. Again, really stunning illustration. I don't want to oversell this, but I really loved this book. I think it is one of my favorite books of all time at this point. I've never read such a great book about nature and life. This is a better memoir than Seven Houses ultimately was, because it actually says more about her writing career in here than Seven Houses did, and why it ultimately felt unfulfilling, and why she left it behind, and what she found. And I wish I had read this before I did my Pulitzer Prize deep dive on Now in November, because I feel like I would have actually gotten insight from this that I didn't get from her memoir. She also talks a lot about the war. This was published, I want to say in 1969, but let's check the copyright date. It is copyright 1969. I crushed it. So she talks about the war, of course, the war being Vietnam. And she mentions at one point that her son was a conscientious objector, and he actually did time for that. She talks about the war a lot throughout the book, kind of in oblique things. Obviously, she is against it. And she's at a point in her life where she seems to prefer nature to people. I can't say I blame her a lot of the time on that. Maybe that's why this book resonates with me. At one point, she mentions something having a bitter taste, and then at the end of the paragraph, or it's too bitter for most people. And at the end of the paragraph, she says, "I'm too bitter for most people." This is a great book. I love it so much. So I would totally recommend this. The last two chapters are surprisingly angry and much more political than the rest of the book. I totally vibed with it, but your mileage may vary. It definitely goes from being a sedate book about nature to being something that is angry, and you can feel the anger burning on the pages. And I found that captivating. I love this book, in case you can't tell. It is so good. I really want to read it again. It's been a long time since I read a book and liked it so much that I wanted to go back to the beginning to read it all over again. There's an audio of this on Scribd, and I kind of want to listen to that too. But when my copy of this arrives, hopefully looking like this, I know I want to go through and take notes, and I have a much harder time taking notes from an audio than I do with a book. So I don't know if I want to do it 3 times in 1 year. That would be a lot. And I can't remember the last time I read a book and almost immediately wanted to read it again. I think it was This Is How You Lose Her by Junot Diaz, a book that I feel like I should reread because I might have more complicated feelings about it if I did it now. That's the last one I can remember, and I definitely wanted to do it with this. It's so good. It's so good. Now, there is actually another book that I have finished in 2023. That is All This Could Be Different by Sarah Thankam Mathews. I just finished it maybe yesterday, maybe the day before. Everything is a blur. Who knows? This was shortlisted for the National Book Award for Fiction in 2022 and lost to The Rabbit Hutch by Tess Gundy. It's really interesting to have read both of those books now because they actually have a lot in common. So if you have read The Rabbit Hutch and liked it, definitely try All This Could Be Different by Sarah Thankam Mathews, because they have sort of similar vibes, that sort of entering adulthood storyline. And a while ago, somebody had asked me about that sort of early adulthood phase. And I had mentioned that I get frustrated with books kind of set in that time period where people really can't get their life together. And they had asked for examples of books that get it right. And I would say The Rabbit Hutch is one, and All This Could Be Different is another. It's a great book. It definitely has some flaws. I think it might be a little bit too long. It's about Sneha, who her family immigrated from India, and I don't want to give too much away. She talks about it early in the book. Her family was forced to go back. She was able to stay as a student. She is now working as a project manager, as a consultant with a temporary visa, and she is trying to make a go of it. She struggles with depression and guilt because her family is gone. She's lonely. She is she's out as a lesbian, but her family doesn't know, and she's struggling to figure out who she is, how she wants to live, what would be a good life, what is an honest life. And a lot of the characters in this book are struggling with the same kinds of questions and coming to sort of different answers. And it's about flawed people being flawed, and I kind of appreciate that. Luster by Raven Lalani, another book that I'd say went in a little too hard on making the character a little bit prickly. Some of the plotting in Luster I just really did not like. But if you liked that book, again, check this one out as well. I liked it. I think I gave it 4 stars on Storygraph. I don't like to just hand out like a star rating, but I've been talking about it a lot with my first 5-star read of 2023, so I feel like I'll just add it for this one as well, and let you know that that feels about right. I think there are some little nitpicky issues with the book itself, and I listened to the audio, and it has that same quality that I mentioned when I talk about The Rabbit Hutch, where the narrator almost sounds bored at certain times, but that kind of mirrors the depression that they're feeling and struggling with. And I think it's a really interesting book, and I look forward to thinking about it some more and processing it a little more. And I would be curious to see what Sarah Thankam Mathews does next. It's a really interesting book, and it does a lot of interesting things. I don't think it's a perfect book, but it's definitely interesting, and I think it really does a great job to capture that sort of early adulthood sense of not knowing who you are, trying to figure out who you are, and set yourself up for life. There is a sense when you're in your early to mid-20s that you could do a lot of different things, and you don't know which way you want to go. And this does a very good job capturing that. And it's also about building relationships. You have that in your life, and the structure your life will take, but also who is going to be in your life and what kind of relationships you're going to have, how permanent they're going to be. And I think it does a really great job with that. In terms of what I am reading right now, I finally started Where Angels Fear to Tread by E.M. Forster. I am participating in the E.M. Forster read-along that Jen the Librarian got going, and it's sort of inspired. I'll have a link to her video about that down below. This was E.M. Forster's first book, so it is the first one that we are reading for 2023. And I had read it before. I didn't own a copy, so this came from the library, and I'm just started it yesterday, so I'm only 2 chapters in. But I love E.M. Forster. I'm pretty sure he's my favorite author, and I think this read-along will prove whether or not that's true. So far, it's going to be true. I'm looking forward to getting into some of his later books more than this one, but I am glad that I'm rereading it. So I'm reading this in print and in audio because it's kind of been a week. I am listening to The Geek Who Saved Christmas by Annabeth Albert. Joel read this and loved it in 2022, and I didn't manage to fit it in during the holidays because I needed to finish the Montana Book Company reading challenge, so I'm catching up to it now. And it's really cute. It's very sweet. I am probably 40% into the audio at this point. I should be done by the end of the weekend, and I don't know where I will go from there. But that's what I'm doing. I'd love to hear what you've been up to. I got my first 5-star read of 2023. I'm curious, have you found yours yet? Let me know in the comment section down below. I'm going to leave it at that. And as always, I really appreciate your time. I'm sorry. It's been a week, so I'm sorry if this seems a little more disorganized or prickly than usual. I'm looking forward to the weekend for sure. Here's what you can look forward to. Now that I've sort of wrapped up best, worst, almost best of 2022, I am going to do a video next week looking at whether or not I met my reading intentions for 2022. I don't really do goals anymore. Maybe someday, but right now I like intentions, and I am in the process of sort of thinking about what my intentions for 2023 are going to be. So I'll do a video about that. Hopefully I'll be doing the library tour soon, and book haul revisit, because I forgot about it in the excitement of wrapping up 2022. So that will be coming as well. Stay tuned for all that. Again, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.